want the audience to feel? That is the only question that a film composer is trying to answer. I actually learned that from my mentor, Elmer Bernstein, who said it over and over and over again, that that's the only question you ask a filmmaker. You don't ask them if they like strings, you don't ask them if they like clarinets, you don't ask them how fast it should be, you just ask them, what do you want the audience to feel? In speaking with Dan Trachtenberg and J.J. Abrams, we felt that the score needed to evoke a bigger cinematic style of storytelling. Rather than highlighting how small and contained the film is, we wanted the music to actually make you feel like you're watching one chapter in what could be a broader cinematic universe. The emotions are big, the tension is big, the music is aggressive and bold and narrative, and it's even mixed into the film with that in mind. I have two primary themes in the score, one for Michelle, our protagonist, and one for Howard, our antagonist. The two themes are interesting in that I think they are the opposite of what you might expect. Michelle is sort of an every woman. She seems at first like an average young woman who's put in an extraordinary circumstance. But her theme is very exotic. Her theme is played on a yaylı tambor, a Turkish string instrument. I did this because I wanted something that felt unusual, something that felt lyrical and vocal almost, but also sounded a little strange. Because ultimately, Michelle is not a normal young woman. She is very resourceful. She's very clever. She's smart. She does the things in this movie that we all would like to think we would do in her situation. Howard's theme also plays counter to what you would expect. Howard is very much an imposing presence on screen. He has a huge physicality to him. But his theme is played in the upper strings, glassy, cold, lifeless harmonics. Just the creepiest, quietest little sound.
I need to use your phone then to call my family and tell them that I'm safe here and make sure they're okay.
10 Cloverfield Lane is a film that I think defies genre. And because of that, I wanted the music to also stand apart. I didn't want the music to be obviously set in any particular style or genre. So because of that, I brought in some unusual sounds that I thought might play counter to audience expectations, and in some cases, sounds that were my lifelong dream to work with. I wanted something to represent the sound of the bunker itself, the sound of that space. I was inspired by the idea that it's underground, it's deep, it's buried. And I wanted something that could create a lot of bass frequencies. Then it hit me. Blaster beam. Okay, what is a blaster beam? A blaster beam is an experimental instrument. This thing is like a 15-foot-long pedal steel guitar from hell. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. Built in the 70s and refined by a performer named Craig Huxley. He was very generous with his time and energy. He brought me, my team, director Dan Trachtenberg, over to his home studio and gave us a crash course in blaster beam. I actually think that the blaster beam, while it doesn't play a melody that you can hum, it, to me, is the signature sound of 10 Cloverfield Lane. Despite having all these exotic colors at my disposal, I knew that the emotional core of the score would be an orchestra. But I didn't just bring in one orchestra, I brought in four. That ranged from a full symphonic orchestra, 90 players, to a warm string orchestra, about 45 players, to a very experimental cello and bass orchestra, about 40 players, all the way down to 4 players. The 4 players are the Calder Quartet. These guys are arguably one of the most exciting quartets in the classical world right now. The music that I wrote for them in particular on 10 Cloverfield Lane is easily the most difficult music I've ever written in my life. I wrote them muscle ache inducing parts, and it was merciless because that's all they played. They played unison tremolo lines that I used to kind of burst through the orchestral texture. They didn't play a whole note in the entire score. I really wanted to use their sound, that tight, tremolo, agitated sound, to represent the thriller side of this score. It goes back to Bernard Herrmann's scores to Hitchcock films. It has a Hitchcockian Bernard Herrmann sound. And ultimately, I used all these different influences and jammed all these things together. And that really was the trick, is making all these disparate ideas fit.